Hmm. Hmm. The Wiki Libertarian Bitch Report is on the way. I guess it's not been the Bitch Report as of late, to be fair. It's been,
Outraged America.
Outraged America. We're mad about it, and we're not quite sure why.
I tuned into a podcast I've not listened to in years because they're just so insufferable. Pod Save America. And I was really curious to see what they had to say about all of this. And something that Kiefer was talking about in the text thread about how insufferable and poorly thought out all of the arguments from the left are right now really stuck true to that. Because if anybody was going to make a good argument, it should be like three former staffers for the Obama White House. But it really was just like a bitch fest. Donald Trump bad, Elon Musk and tech bros not good. And I will, to their credit, they made some decent points and things that I think that we can get into that you would agree with about, executive overreach and, just kind of the perils that could be facing us.
Which in some ways is quite hilarious. I mean, there's the obvious left-wing bitch on the surface of like being mean to immigrants, supporting wars in other countries, which I guess is less and less of a left-wing ideal. But there's the obvious ones like that. But then you're hearing a lot of like you don't understand your own argument kind of bitching, where it's like, oh, can you believe that they're just letting this guy Elon Musk as an unrepresented, unelected government official just go through and change the way things work? And it's like, that's exactly what the other side's been complaining about this entire time.
For sure.
This is, do you not see your own irony in complaining about what essentially most of us would call the deep state?
But beyond, before you even get to the deep state, just like the droves of the bureaucrat class that occupies government, there is a lot of that where you don't even have to go to the deep state. It's just that this is just kind of how you mean you don't like unelected people just kind of doing what they want? Oh, well, then where have you been for the last 40 years of American government?
Oh, that's an interesting concept, that an unelected government official that you don't agree with ideologically might be a bad thing within the system. It's like, yeah, welcome to what the right was bitching about. I mean, even down to like, which I was thinking about that. I never did go back and do that. Now I'm just realizing I didn't do my homework on this particular one, but I wanted to go back and see some lefties. Like, is anybody talking about Project 2025 anymore? You remember how big of a boogeyman that was?
I've actually heard a couple of people
talk about rails.
Yeah. But the only people I've actually heard talking about it it's kind of from the right. Dan Abrams had one of the writers of Project 2025
celebrating they got him through it. They're like, you're right. Well, we were planning this giant conspiracy the whole time.
what was really interesting is though that they weren't like saying like, oh yeah, we got you. It was just, hey, look, this is like, we're still over here in this lane. We have our policy recommendations. Donald Trump is implementing some of he actually tried hard to distance himself to make sure, not to commingle it. And
I wonder how much of that there has been maybe on both sides of this election too, and maybe because it wasn't nearly as big of a shock as it was with Hillary losing, with Queen Hillary falling, but the outrage from the left seems lighter, and the right seems a lot closer to being gracious winners this time. Not gracious winners, mind you, but closer to being gracious.
Gracious.
There's a little bit more of a soft-handed approach when coming to like, the drunken conversation at the bar that I'm hearing is less sharp from the conservatives this time, because it's more like, hey, we're fixing this thing now. Let's move forward. So, and this maybe misplaced confidence in the Teflon Don himself, but it's interesting to see the different type of minutia around it, the different temperaments around this election, and almost spouting from like the insanity of the left these last 4 years and longer than that even. I mean, this last 16-ish years of the acceptance of all, and like the desire to completely eradicate what is our national identity in the name of like making every single concession to every single minority group they could find. And all the way down to the point where like there's guys in Fox masks screaming at the DNC, and it's like, oh, you guys have lost your freaking minds. Like it's so easy to present as the reasonable side when the other side is talking about other kin and neurotypical diseases and how they're a system of beings because they have multiple personality disorders. You're like, okay,
right. It is out of that part. I think what's going on is that we're kind of in the shock phase of it all. And I think that the outrage machine from the left will pick up. I just think that it's moving at such a pace. They don't know what to be outraged about. And that's going to...
That's fair. That was one of the best ones was the USAID and how many quick tweets I saw about, you would just cut US aid like that. And then to like start reading what USAID stands for and that aid's nowhere in the acronym. And you're like, oh, okay. This is like more like asset acquisition for the CIA rather.
Yeah. So most people, right. Like most people thought it was US aid and not USAID.
And to be fair, when I first saw it, I was not super familiar with the organization. And that was my first is like, okay, cut some aid organization. And then 2 seconds into reading before I went angrily to Twitter to scream at the orange-faced man because I like to not put my foot directly in my mouth every morning when I wake up. You realize like, oh no, this is actually a pretty dark organization.
Maybe, and I don't know that much about it.
That's to be fair, that's with my own bias of assuming that everything bad in the world is because the CIA had something to do with it. So I do have a slant in my belief system.
Maybe there is, maybe once they start digging into it, they're going to find that it is this corrupt Marxist organization as Elon and Trump have been claiming, or maybe it's just a way for, rich people to, get some taxpayer subsidies and make some money. Maybe it's not as sinister. Exactly. Maybe it's not like sinister. Maybe it's not like it may not be good, but it might.
Well, here's the argument I think to saying it's not sinister is kind of the same argument as like, well, the world would fall apart if we were not their police, because in large part this is used as like funding new stream medias within other countries. Like, so they're like buying podcasters essentially with this money and trying to sway messages. Like it's that kind of thing, and buying buildings that they might need for the CIA in the future. And like, this is very much a kind of bureaucratic arm of the CIA.
Everything I don't like is the CIA.
This is also true.
I could sum up the last 30 seconds of what you said. Everything. It's all the CIA. I don't like it. It's CIA. No, and it might be. It very well could be. I think it's just something that's been really interesting that I've been watching is because it's moving so quick. It's really hard for anybody to create any sort of like organized opposition. I mean, the DNC is in shambles right now. They're stuck. You know what I mean? Like they got their teeth kicked in, and it's going to take some time for them to regroup. And I think there will be a concerted effort down the road.
They shit their pants and then got their teeth kicked in.
Yep, that's fair.
They made a plenty good mess on their own.
Yep, totally fair. So I think that's going to take some time. I think that we will start to see a little bit more concerted efforts to, and I mean, and what's so interesting about this is that you have deep political strategists that have been tied to the Democratic Party for a long time, like David Axelrod talking, and he put out, I can't remember, I read the article, but he's talking about like USAID is not the hill to die on. If you're going to, there's only a limited amount of outrage in opposition before we're just kind of the screaming children that no one's going to listen, right? If everything the Orange Man does is bad, then nothing is bad. And so he was saying like, this isn't the hill to die on because Americans don't want to see their money spent on foreign aid. And so it's really interesting to see a little bit of the, I guess some cognition, some self-awareness from some of these like long-term Democratic strategists saying like, we've got to shift completely because the Orange Man bad narrative isn't going to work this time. everyone's desensitized to it. We've screamed fire too many times, and now nobody, even if there is a fire in the movie theater, no one's going to believe us.
Right. I haven't heard a Nazi in a long time. Like they didn't even want to throw it at Elon when he straight up did the salute on stage. Like they're so like we've worn that phrase out to the point where it has, you can straight up do the Nazi salute. There's a part of me that holds to that theory that I told you and Kiefer, that there is a little bit of me that, as knowing Elon Musk to be the internet troll that he is, that this might have just been a troll in real life, and that this was his, and it's a hell of a bluff. Put all your chips in on, I'm going to do a Nazi salute on national television, betting that they have worn the phrase Nazi out so much that I'm just going to get exempt from it. So acknowledging that's a big gamble. There is a little piece of my brain that still thinks Elon might have done that to just go, look how ridiculous you have pushed this line. Right. To the point where you can't even call a Nazi salute a Nazi.
A Nazi salute, right? I'm still, the jury's out on, I'm out on that one for me. And honestly, I don't really care, to be fair. At the end of the day, and I think I said that. Well,
apparently nobody does. It made about 2 days of the news cycle. Nobody cares already.
And that's going to be, and that's the most dizzying thing about this, right? Is that the news cycle is moving so fast. I mean, we've had 3 full-blown trade wars that have resolved in less than
within 24 hours.
You know what I mean? It's dizzying to try to keep up. Like, it's a full-time job, and people whose full-time job it is to do this are having a hard time keeping track of what's going on, and there's so much to talk about. And so it's going to be there's pros and cons of that. And I think that we're in the early stages, like you had said before we started rolling, right? These are the scripted plays, and there's no defense for it. They're getting caught flat-footed, but eventually, he's gonna run out of steam. You cannot win forever. And that's the title of this podcast today. Are we tired of winning? Because it does seem that it just keeps on coming and coming and coming. And it's like,
that's really funny. At one point, my wife was talking to somebody today, and she said, "Oh yeah, Logan's got to go talk shit about the government tonight on his podcast." And I said, "I might be the only one talking shit about the government on the podcast." Matt's pretty balls to the wall with everything that's happening so far. He's feeling pretty good.
Yes and no, right? Yes and no. I'm not quite I'm not a full-blown Trump apologist yet. I might be, I could end up one.
I'm not gonna lie, he's shooting a pretty high percentage at the moment.
However, there are, and this is going to be kind of the double-edged sword, where we have to think of the long-term consequences, right? It's nice when you're winning to just disregard the precedent that's set, right? If I get what I want, then who cares how I got it? And now we're in this period where it's like, yeah, sure. Do I want the Department of Education abolished? Sure. Do I want it done, via executive order when he may not have the constitutional authority to do so? I don't. Right? Because if it gets me what I want today, but he did it through a way that only expands the executive branch's power, well, what happens in 4, 8, 12 years when eventually the pendulum will swing back? And all of a sudden you get the left's version of Donald Trump. And now it's like, you don't want the executive branch to run amok. And even though I can like what he is doing in a lot of these areas, I still don't want him usurping any sort of power that he does not have. I don't want him taking power from Congress. I don't want the expansion of this, because eventually it's going to swing back.
And even more than that, I don't particularly trust Trump all that much myself, but
fair.
Absolutely. Like there will be a moment, and I was gearing up to that and got sidetracked by myself earlier in this. But with that horrific job that we watch the Democrats do, and with all the winning we're seeing from the right now, and it just seems like eternal spring for the conservatives, like it's going to go forever. But like, you don't have to go back that far. You can go to the Bush era. I mean, even to this day, like we're still dealing with the fallout from the Bush era.
Absolutely.
I can't even remember the exact connection I'd heard today. But I mean, it was during the Bush era that we, that was it. It was the USAID. I mean, one of the things that they funneled some of the most of the money to was to overthrow the democratically elected leader of Ukraine that was a little too sympathetic to Russia during the Bush administration. It's like we're still, it's not even just limited to the Middle East. I thought that today when like I can't wait for the next person to try to tell me that Trump's worse than Bush and be like, like every war we're fighting has Bush's fingerprints on it, right? Like,
right.
He's marched us into every hot war we're in right now.
For
maybe
sure.
maybe you can't give him credit for Israeli issues, but outside of that, like he was directly involved in almost every one of them. And I mean, I guess to that point too, anytime you're marching on the Middle East, there's a little part of you that goes, I mean, how much influence did Netanyahu have in whispering in your ear?
Sure. And it makes you wonder. And this is where, and I think what's on this note, right, just kind of as we ramble through kind of our quick observations, I think we've seen this is going to be the first like real break. Vivek leaving Doge, no one cared, right? It's, you know what I mean? That's deep fighting. That's deep infighting that the average working man doesn't care about. This whole Trump like we'll take over Gaza. This has been a big, I think this is the first break that we're seeing, because there's a lot of anti-war people that voted for Donald Trump that are like, bro, no, that's not what it's like. No, we didn't.
Why is this on day one's agenda?
Exactly. Like we didn't vote you in to start annexing territory and be Israel's little bitch, and it was going to happen. I mean, every U.S. president's Israel's little bitch, but there's to a degree in which you take the dick in public is, you know what I mean? This was a pretty big one. And so it's going to be interesting to see, how long does that, like, how long does the Gaza thing stay in the news? I've heard this is ethnic cleansing. They're trying to get in all seriousness, even though I think that it's like the United States has no business annexing, taking over, being involved. You know what I mean? That's none of our business. I don't want to see a single penny go to it. So somebody raised an interesting question today. And it was like, well, what are these people supposed to do? Like, there is no more Gaza. You can go to the Google. I saw this Google Earth post before and after. Gaza is effectively destroyed, top to bottom. Every square inch of that thing is pretty much rubble, debris. And what do you do with them? How do you try to, it's like, it's got to be rebuilt. Do we expect them to just live in that shithole? And you know what I mean? Without doing anything. And it does raise an interesting question that nobody's talked about.
I think we expect them to live in the shithole next door. We're going to go to each.
Sure.
Them into taking them.
Yeah, you kick them in the West Bank. But it raises a really interesting question that nobody's really talking about. Is like, what do you do with 1.8 million Palestinians that no longer have homes, that live in an area the size of Philadelphia that has to be rebuilt from the bottom up?
I think this is an issue of patience, really. I mean, Israel's doing a pretty good job of bringing that number down every year. I think eventually,
that's fair. But I mean, if that's what if the goal is that, then I mean, Israel's done. If the goal has been to ethnically cleanse them, then they haven't done a great job. They could have definitely been a lot more thorough in their extermination of the Palestinians.
I don't know. To be fair, there's a lot of outside pressures. There's these like international meetings about genocide, and like I think it's murky waters, and I would say that Israel's done an absolutely admirable job of trying to genocide the Palestinians while not losing their own recognition on the international scale.
Totally. And you would think, to be fair, a peoples with such a, how do I put this? A close tie to that phenomenon would be a little bit more self-aware and a little bit more sympathetic to the plight of a minority population and suffering. But you know what I mean? I guess woe be to the vanquished.
Hurt people, man. The recidivism rate with almost anything is higher than you would anticipate.
That's totally fair. But this takes me back to something that you pitched a long time ago, and I think it was genius. No one is talking about, like, everyone's talking about, like, well, what do we do with them? It's simple. We send them to Ukraine. We send them to you create a 15-mile demilitarized zone. They're already used to living in a strip. We'll just put them, We'll
they're going
give
to get
them the
more land.
Donbass for sure.
Yeah, well, it can be the Gaza Bass moving forward if you'd like. However you guys want to rename it.
The Gaza Bass.
Gazbassistan, whatever.
Gazbassistan.
You know, I said that completely off the top of my head as a joke, and I've brought it up a dozen times to random people. And the more I talk about it, the more I'm like, I think this is a good idea. Actually, I kind of think this has legs. If you could,
it is,
and you can end two wars at once in your peace negotiation treaties. When Ukraine and Russia, you just end the Gaza thing and ship them out, and you know, Israel can decide which country they want next and start bombing the shit out of that one.
Right. It is no worse than any other idea that's been pitched out there. It deserves consideration. I think we should start tweeting at Elon Musk about it so that way it can rise to the president's
we're
level.
getting close. I'm not even sure he hasn't listened to the podcast. This is exactly what Teflon Don's talking about right now. He's like, we got to get him out of there. Why would they want to live there? It's a terrible place. We'll find a place for him. Like we're basically one bad treaty with Egypt away from the Donbass being the only option left on the table.
that are like parts of Canada that we could, you know, that we could,
right.
Because there's a lot of marshy, horrible land in Canada that wouldn't be, you know, it'd be a tough living, but they could probably scratch out an existence up there. I'm sure there's places in North Dakota, you know, that nobody would miss.
Something tells me that bringing any brown people into the country is not on Trump's agenda at the moment.
Oh God, no. That's nope. I'm lucky to be here, man. You know what I mean? It's
you enunciate that English real well.
I'm just waiting every day, you know, every day, just waiting for that ICE agent outside my door.
Have you heard the ultimate citizenship test? It's a one-word test.
Walmart.
You just ask them to say Walmart. I saw a post the other day where it was some conservative was doing the like, look at this. There's no wait at the doctor's office. It's beautiful and clean, and I get to go right in. And same thing at my local Walmart. There's not one person in line at Walmart. And I just commented underneath, your Walmart's going to close soon. It's almost gone.
Your Walmart.
But I do like, and I think you're going to see that, especially in South Texas and a lot of areas where there's a lot of conservatives really like cheering it on right now, and they don't realize their small town is going to die in the process because they've lost 50% of their population overnight.
There's definitely going to be like some leopard ate your face moments as this goes, you know, as this continues. And it's one of those things, right? It's like I'm not nearly as versed. You know, maybe next week we can have Kiefer back and he can educate us on you know, the tariffs in Canada. But I do know that Canada, like, it's not an insignificant part of our economy, right? It's like, I think I saw the number. It's like it's over a little bit over $2 billion a day is kind of the trade that we have with Canada. I also learned that cars pass back and forth over the border sometimes as many as 7 times before they're actually completed, which I learned that a couple of days ago.
Because there's a much higher import tax on finished goods a lot of times with automobiles. So what they do, there's a lot of that here in Texas as well, and carports and factories in Mexico, and they assemble. I don't even remember what plant it is now, but the plant I was talking to this gentleman about, they assemble the entire car in Mexico minus the doors, so that they can ship raw goods essentially. Like these are all mechanical parts. And they bring it over the border, and then the Mexicans on this side of the border put the doors on the car, and then they sell whole cars without an import tax. So I'm sure you see a lot of that between Detroit and whatever Canadian Detroit's called. I don't remember.
Right, we don't care.
Whatever French for Detroit is up there.
we don't care. But I think it is really interesting to, I don't know, just kind of just all of it. It's so dizzying, and that's the thing. There's
been so many times this past week in our group chat with all the political minds. I keep like go clock in at work, clock out of work, look at my phone, 75 missed messages, and I'm like, oh my God.
For sure.
Even this summary of what Trump has done so while I was at work is going to be exhausting to catch up on.
Yep. For sure. I had one of those moments yesterday. I was doing something and then it started blowing up, and I looked at it and I was like, man, I'll look at this later. I still haven't even looked at it yet. I was like,
it's too
busy to catch up on it. Right. At this moment.
It's dizzying and confusing too, because it's like deep political observation followed by like the most crude joke you've ever heard. And then there's a reply
Memes.
to every other message.
And then there's a meme dump.
Get meme dumps in there. Yeah, I'll drop 25 memes at a time in that group chat. It's chaos.
It is chaos, and you know what I mean. That emulates very closely to what's going on, and
That's fair.
And it's hard to say, right? I've heard the theory that Donald Trump, throws out the Gaza thing because he's trying to distract you from other, like Elon Musk breaking into the Treasury servers or whatever they accused him of doing. Why he's got a bunch of poor kids sleeping there, it's and same with like the DI thing, because that helicopter crash happened right after we got off last week, and then the next day he talks about it's DEI. It's even though air traffic control has been hurting and needs a lot of people, so they turned away 1,000 able-bodied people just to hire these, all these people with disabilities, and you're just like, and it's hard and was all of that just to?
I think you can just say women. You don't have to say people with disabilities.
Well,
mentally deficient humans.
There's that's it's not just that translates over to us too. I mean, you're listening to two of them. To be fair, it's like
how the crow calls the raven black,
and it makes you wonder: was all of that just an attempt to distract everybody from what was, three pretty controversial and in like mainstream politics, confirmation hearings? Is it one of those like, look over here and everyone looks over there and nobody pays attention to the three things that everyone was focused on 5 seconds ago?
You've all messed up now, and RFK's back in office. My evil plans.
He can't even do the voice.
Yeah, I wish he could speak better. It would make him a lot more likable.
That half-ass impression wrecked my throat just now. That was hard.
Think of how he feels, dude.
Doing that fake voice every day to seem sympathetic.
He goes home and just like starts speaking normally.
It gives one good
clears out his throat.
To Jafar from Aladdin. These Americans have no idea. This public has never seen this devious plan unraveling.
It's
gay Disney villain right away.
Yeah, it checks out. It wouldn't shock me. And at this point, I think that's my big takeaway from the last 3 weeks of the Trump administration, is that we should just be prepared to be shocked every day for a while, and it's going to just keep moving. And by shocked, I don't know. I'm not really shocked by any of this stuff. I know that it is outrageous and shocking to some, and if you find yourself as
how many
one of
days
those,
am I going to get how many more days in a row do I get a Twitter alert that makes me go, all right,
right?
That's interesting.
It is.
Do you see any? I mean, I don't even know how we begin to know what the inner workings of Donald Trump's brain it looks like, or how many plans he's laid out. But like, I don't know. When do you see this momentum finally slowing, or what do you think is the first hurdle that he runs into, the first fuck up that really gets everybody kind of going like, ooh?
I think, this isn't a big hurdle. I think it just confirms something that any reasonable person could have expected. There was a national injunction on the birthright citizenship thing. Mm-hmm. And essentially the lower court said, look, it's plain and simple. Precedent's been set. You're born here. You're an American citizen. Case closed. Mm-hmm. I don't see the Supreme Court overturning that. Realistically, so I think that's going to be like one of the first kind of like legal defeats he's going to be handed. It's like, yep, you don't get to just end the 14th Amendment via executive order. It was good fodder for your base, but I really think that the courts are gonna. I don't see the Supreme Court overturning that one. And everyone's like, oh, the Supreme Court is bought and paid by Donald Trump. It's like, oh, you mean the same Supreme Court that refused to hear any of his election fraud cases? Oh, you mean that same Supreme Court that was just like, no, bro, you lost, leave office. That bought and paid for Supreme Court gotcha.
Yeah, they like to ignore the ones that don't fit the narrative too good. Yeah, I probably would agree with you. That seems like it's going to come up pretty quickly as one. And I mean, to your point again, that to me, I was surprised to hear him going after that. First of all, even with all of the rhetoric leading up to it, I didn't really see that being one of his big focuses. But it might be just kind of what you're saying too, that this is a great one. That when I say this out loud on TV, my base loses their shit. And everybody's going to be preoccupied with stopping that. And while they're doing that, I get to deport as many of these people as I can, get my hands on without as much opposition on that, because they're more worried about like the sanctity of being born in America, making you a citizen, rather than like, how many people did you round up today from my favorite restaurant?
Right. How many? Yeah, for sure. And that's I think that's, and to give Trump credit, he is brilliant. He is probably one of the best at that. Look over here. And while we're all looking at the shiny ball in the air, he's doing something else. I think he is fantastic at that. And something that, anybody that is super pumped about the Trump chain rolling down these tracks as it has been, it's government metastasizes. It all, if it's not eliminated, it finds a way to stick around. And so, right. So let's take Gitmo as an example, because I saw this, I saw a little news flash up that came on my phone about the first deportees are arriving at Gitmo. I don't know how long they're going to be there. I didn't even open it up. But everybody that's so outraged about this, remember that Joe Biden had the opportunity to shut down Gitmo. Obama had the opportunity to shut down
Obama
Gitmo.
Run on that?
He did.
Wasn't that part of his campaign?
And he did not. And so it's like, so the failure to eliminate some of these things by government only creates the pathway for somebody else to come at and use it down the road. And so for all these people that are so outraged about Gitmo now housing detainees, it's like, yeah, well, maybe you should have been mad at Obama for not doing what he said. It's
well, I know what I said that one time, but sometimes people got to get tortured. Got to torture some folks.
Hope change. It's a real, but it's a real thing, and we should.
Yeah, there's never been a governmental agency that burns itself out. That's just not how it works. I mean, that's basic principle, and we've exhausted those analogies on this podcast before, but like, you find incentives within whatever system you're in. If the system pays you, you're benefiting from it, and you're going to find ways to make it relevant or have a larger budget, or at the very least, you're not going to let it die on the vine if that's where you've been taking your paychecks from, and your pension is on the line as well. So it's it's every government agency. They either come to a forcible end, or they continue to grow and morph and find ways to get larger budgets and become the CIA eventually. And did we talk about how the CIA is responsible for everything?
Everything I don't like is the CIA.
I get there yet?
I don't think you have. So by all means, continue.
I'll try to circle back to it for sure.
And it's something I know. I think I said this in the group text, but something I would like to see in terms of like just the ultimate. I'm intrigued by what's going on. It's kind of like Mad Men just out. There's kind of no more detente. It seems like everything's on the table, for better or for worse. We'll see. But since the president of El Salvador threw out that it's like, hey, we'll take your deportees and your criminals. I would love to see Trump do an executive order. You have 90 days to turn yourself in to the nearest ICE agency. If we find you after that, you are going to the Supermax prison in El Salvador. That is a big stick. I think you would. I think stick. If it was like,
one might say not the most compassionate of sticks to use.
No, in fact, it's very dispassionate. I know that human rights activists would argue that it is illegal and unethical. That type of a stick, but it is a hell of an incentive to turn yourself in and deport yourself, because it's like, if we find you on day 91, you're not going to Gitmo. You're going to the Supermax prison where they house all of those gang members that makes El Salvador a safe place now. You get to go be in there with them if we catch you on day 91. I would like to see that type of that. I don't know, not even a bluff, just play that card.
Here it comes, boys. We hadn't really talked about it yet. We've talked Greenland, we've talked Canada, where do you take all these immigrants if you're rehousing them? Why don't we just pull in England? Let's just take them to Australia and drop them off. Most of the island's not even that well densely populated. It's desertous. They're brown, so they're already more well equipped than all
There's
the
some
English
really
criminals
dark
we drop
people.
off there.
You know, I don't think did Australia genocide all their indigenous population?
No, they kind of pulled an American thing where it's like, it's not genocide, guys. 1% of them are left and they live on that reservation over there where there's no
Huh.
infrastructure.
Fair enough. Well, don't lose. You know what I mean? It's one of those very unfortunate lessons of history. Is it cool? No, but I don't know. You lost, so it's
That's rough. I
sucks
don't
to
know that there was
lose.
much of an option there either for the Aboriginal people. Like, they by all accounts were Stone Age, essentially. Like it was a step beyond like even the American Indians when we came in contact with them. Like at least they were building pyramids. Like the Aboriginal people
Allegedly.
were very far behind on the technology tree in
Yeah.
the game of civilization.
Well, that's fair, and it's one of the. It's I don't know. I did see that Guatemala, after Marco Rubio went and met with them, they're going to now be accepting, I think, 40% more flights, and they said that they will disperse people that are deported back to their home country, right? So if you get picked up in America, we'll fly you to Guatemala, and then Guatemala will send you back to your place of origin. And I'm sure that there was, you know what I mean? I'm sure there's a big old aid package. I'm sure that came with a really nice carrot to say, like, hey, what can you do for us? And this is so I want to hear your thoughts on this. It seems that, right, it's Teddy Roosevelt's foreign policy was speak softly and carry a big stick. Donald Trump's is screaming in the Twitter sphere and toss around a machete. And
Right.
it seems at this point to be working quite well. And it makes you wonder, how long does it continue to work? When's the wait? And I guess that's kind of the question you asked earlier. Like, when's the blowback coming? You can't win forever.
And what's the it could be way down the road too, because
It could be a couple years.
we have a lot of negotiation chips. We are the strongest military the world's ever seen. We're the strongest economy the world's ever seen. We have military bases in every country around the world. We supply the military funding out of our tax dollars to half of the goddamn world. Like there are a lot of chips on this. We have as seen with Canada and Mexico, they are completely dependent on us on their trade, especially Canada. And that's why they folded so quickly when any threat of tariffs came up. He can get away with a lot of this in the short term because he can make life really fucking rough for a lot of people in the short term. He can also spend this next 4 years pissing off and poisoning every country against America.
Right.
And we could see, Trump make it out unscathed, but then second term of JD Vance, like what happens when the entire world's like, hey, America's economy is starting to shit the bed. The bubbles burst. All that money they printed during COVID is finally really shit's hitting the fan. Some sort of drought happened, and now America is in a bad spot. How many of our formerly maybe more negotiable allies are like, hey, this maybe is a good time to stick my dirk between that chink in the armor there.
Yeah, I understand, but I also wonder, like, what are they gonna do? Like, you're gonna kick us out. You're gonna kick out American troops out of Europe. Oh, NATO, NATO, you're gonna have to leave. You're gonna have to fight the Russians and fend for your own defense by yourself. It's like, oh no, don't threaten me anymore. And it kind of does make you wonder, right? It has to something will give eventually, right? You can't win forever. There's always going to be a course correction. I just wonder what would it be like? What's the most realistic? And now we're just like in the world of alternative histories and what ifs. That's never ending and completely hypothetical. But I'm just trying to work out in my mind real quick. What would the consequences, like Europe? It's like Europe's gonna band together and deal with their own collective defense. Sounds like a win to me. You know what I mean?
Have fun with that. I've been clamoring for that for a decade.
Right? It's sounds like a win. Now, I'm sure that there are downfalls that could, I'm sure we could. It's like if Europe, if everybody went into BRICS and all of a sudden America is frozen out of an international payment system, that's probably not good for us. That would not bode well. I'm actually really happy that the whole Canada thing never materialized, and it might. Who knows? In 30 days, this might, like this hand grenade. It didn't get resolved. It just got kicked out of the room. And in 30 days, we have to walk out of the room, and we'll see if the hand grenade's going to go off or not. We're going to kick it to another room. But something that I bet a lot of Americans don't know is so much of our fertilizer comes from Canada. It's an astronomical amount, like 80-something% of our potash comes from Canada, along with a huge chunk of the nitrogen. Springtime's is not, it's like you don't really want to start a trade war with fertilizer when farmers are about to start planting crops for this upcoming, it's one of those. It's like I'm glad that one we missed that one, because that's one of those that could have hurt us very quickly and in very meaningful ways.
And all I guess almost any of these things that we throw out there will hurt the lowest rung of our society first. That's how it always goes.
Yeah.
But definitely when food gets expensive, like that is rough on
everybody,
those of American citizens who are struggling week to week.
Mm-hmm. And it does, and it hurts the poorest. And this is, one of those it's one of those little known facts that's lost to history. The French Revolution did not start out organized. It started with a bunch of pissed off Paris women that were really upset about the price of bread. And before you know it, things just skyrocket, and the king's head is in a basket before you know it. And so it is something to keep in mind that, and we've talked about this numerous times, that once a level of comfort is taken away from people, that's when it gets dangerous. You can be poor, you can be destitute, you can have really no hope of economic success or any sort of like ladder moving in any meaningful way. But if you can go to work,
start starving.
Yep. If you can keep the lights on, you can go to work. If you can keep your family moderately fed, it's all good. As soon as you can't, that's when things start to get real tricky.
As soon as you boil your first leather shoelace, you're ready to start killing your governmental officials. Like you get pretty jumpy then. Yeah, that is one of those interesting. I can't even remember. There were like 3. We did an episode on that way back in the day, years ago at this point, of like the conditions in order to cause a revolt. And there were 3, if I remember right, but that's the only one that sticks in my head, is like, because all the other ones were almost like disdain for your government or like distrust in your government. It's like, okay, that's pretty easy to get to. Like everybody probably has some level of that. But the one that really stuck with me was like, you got to be hungry. That's when people start revolting, is when the food starts getting thin. That's when governments start getting overturned.
Yeah. Hunger's a real bitch.
I get angry. I go one meal without, and I'm the crankiest little bitch you're going to see all day. I'm no fun to be around.
Yep. For sure.
Just one meal. And I'm particularly fat. I have a lot of stuff to feed off of.
It's what is it? If you hate everybody, you should eat. If you hate yourself, you should take a shower. I can't. It's one of those. It's
if you hate your father, you should take a dick. Or the other.
What? It's like excuse me.
If you hate your wife, you should have another drink.
Yeah. But it is. I don't know. It's super interesting.
Those are interesting pitfalls. I do find my big concern with the Trump second term here is, one, as it is with every president, the expansion of executive powers. He is in a lot of ways shrinking government right now, but in a lot of ways, he's also setting precedents for the future of what an executive can get away with and what they should be allowed to do and influence. And much to your point earlier, how long before we have a catastrophe and the conservative side, for anybody who's conservative and cheering all this on, and all of a sudden you have your next generation Hillary Clinton's the president. You got to put up with that crazy bitch who's got all these new precedents and new powers and new unabashed, like there's not going to be a Democrat that comes in next who's like shy about signing executive orders.
Nope.
They're going to be like, no, this is what we do now. This is how the game has moved. I think we've also seen a really interesting acceleration in that. Like it's been accelerating, and then maybe especially under Biden with as many EOs as he passed and as many people as he pardoned, and especially considering that none of us believe he was the man who had any of those ideas. It's like, what is the sanctity of a pardon now? What does that mean?
Well, it means it depends on if you're on the receiving end of it. If you're on the receiving end of it, it's
true.
everything.
That still feels good.
That's everything, dude. That's everything, bro.
I guess I mean more like in the public image. Like there's a lot of hand wringing in both of these guys as they were pardoning people. There was a lot of like talk of like, well, a pardon is actually kind of an admittance of guilt, and like you're supposed to kind of chastise yourself on the court's floor. It's like that's not what a pardon means today.
Nope.
It sure doesn't look like any of these people were admitting to guilt to me.
Yep. It may have meant that maybe once upon a time, but not today. Yeah. I hear you. It is one of the more outrageous powers that the president is vested. But if you're on the receiving end of it, I don't give a shit about what the public thinks about the pardon and has it overreached. Just like, I'm out of jail, I'm walking, I am scot-free from my crimes. I am stoked. The public can suck a big one as far as I'm concerned.
It's that, and then for all of his anti-war talk, it doesn't seem like we're getting an extremely quick wrap up to Ukraine.
No,
so
much for that 24 hours.
Yeah, no shit.
But
haven't been talking about that in a while.
Yeah, well,
maybe we see an end to that one. Hopefully, we see an end to that one in the next 4 years. But it sure doesn't seem to be at the top of the list right now. Doesn't seem like we're going to slow down in Israel.
Oh God,
no. At all. Does not seem like that's slowing down. And now we're talking about wars with the cartel and renaming them a terrorist organization, which again is another one of those precedents that I'm like, I'm not saying that they're not a terrorist organization, that these horrible cartels aren't partaking in terrorism, but I don't love giving them a new moniker that allows our government to have a whole new set of rules with engaging them and how much money they're allowed to spend and how much military access they're allowed to commit to it.
And we've already seen that. Just real fast. There was yesterday there was a flight over Mexican airspace. It kind of went right down through the Baja, the ocean, whatever it was at the Gulf of California, whatever that little strip is between the Baja and the mainland. But it was a U.S. intelligence plane flying down, gathering intelligence on cartel activity. So we're already seeing a massive escalation. I mean, we didn't see that under Joe Biden. We didn't see that under Obama, Bush. No, that has not been on the table. And for it to all, gathering intelligence is the first step.
And if you are going to engage in a hot war with the cartels just to the south of our border, that Iron Dome idea starts to seem like maybe even a necessity. Like, I guess you're not seeing a lot of intercontinental ballistic missiles coming out of the cartels. But at least you're looking at upping a lot of security at the border in order to keep American citizens safe as you poke the hornet's nest.
For sure. Travel advisory: do not travel to Mexico at that point.
Right. You're talking about tensions in Greenland, where like there was kind of a reported call today where he was talking to the MP of Denmark, and apparently, like she kind of realized on the phone that he's not joking about buying Greenland. And she gets very offended, and he kind of goes with the tough man thing of like, look, we can buy Greenland or we can find a way to take Greenland. But Greenland is too important for America not to take at this point. Like, I think Trump's really got his eyes on it. So you look at Greenland, continuing war in Ukraine and Israel, probably escalation in Israel, for being honest, starting a new war at the southern border with these cartels, building an Iron Dome. Like, how anti-war? How much work does Doge? Yeah, how anti-war are you for one? But how much work does Doge have to do to cut that much money out of the budget so that you're not actually spending more money than you did before you got here?
It's a real concern, right? It does make you wonder about how serious, and that's the tough thing about Mr. DT. He says so many things. It's hard. Like, do you take him literally or do you take him serious? And so sometimes you can't do both. Sometimes you can, but sometimes you can't. Sometimes you can't do either. But it's tough, right? How much energy is exhausted on just trying to figure out, like, what the hell is he even talking about? And yeah, it does make you wonder. And I know that in that executive order that I think was already overturned, that like freeze of federal spending and stuff, the exemption or for foreign aid was Israel, and what was the other one? Jordan or Egypt. Okay, those two.
Where they're going to ship all those Palestinians to.
Exactly, right.
They got to keep them happy because they're about to get a whole lot of new citizens.
And they don't want them. Egypt certainly doesn't want them. But it does.
They're not excited about it, but to be fair, they have probably the only like viable, peaceful neighbor to Israel. They've been getting along. I mean, that's the one that when people were like, well, you can't negotiate between Israel and Muslim country X because there's just no way. It's like, that's the example people will point to is like, well, they did in Egypt. They had a conversation, right. Some goods traded hands, and nobody shot anybody since then. So that's pretty good. It's not bad. Yeah, but I don't know where else you send them. And Egypt's been a pretty good boy from the perspective of American world domination interest in that they've played ball while we've sent them grain. So
for sure,
we're happy with that arrangement. They seem to be so far.
They've allowed us some nice black sites that nobody likes to talk about. You know, it was either during that whole, you know, the global war on terror, those black sites are in Poland and Egypt for the most part. And you know, so they've played ball in that regard. I don't know, man. That's the theme of everything we've been talking about. It's moving so fast, it's hard to keep up. Who knows? I'm very interested to see, because he is, you know, it's like you got kind of been getting everything that you want in just throwing around the weight that is the United States, you know. We're not even the 800-pound gorilla. We're the 3-ton elephant in the, you know, we're not a gorilla, we're an elephant in this very small room sometimes. And I'm Panama, right? Pulling out of the Belt and Road Initiative. American naval ships can pass free of charge. It seems, you know, and maybe this is what needs to happen, right? In the long term, right? In the short term, maybe it's going to be painful. Maybe it's going to suck. There's going to be blowback. There always is. But maybe this is, you know, if you ever want to get off the course of just the federal government spending more and more money, absorbing more and more responsibilities, taking more latitude in your life, maybe we have to just turn it over to an oligarch and give the billionaire that is definitely a fucking super villain. Maybe we just gotta give him access to it, and hopefully, you know.
I sent you that meme of him and the Fifth Element guy, right?
I think so.
Pretty sure I did. It just has almost the same haircut.
Yeah, for sure. Yep. Egypt's in that one. It's true. It's and it's tough to say, right? Because that kind of contradicts, like, beware of the powers that you give those. But I don't. Is there? I guess.
This is your post-libertarian argument that y'all been preaching at me the whole time. That look, the only way to truly make any groundswell towards a libertarian future is to actually get in good with these rhinos and use the wrecking ball to then destroy everything and get to this point. So I guess we're getting at least one small experiment on that argument of like. Sure. Is this truly more effective, or are we going to get out the back end and go like, holy shit, right. Let that millionaire run away?
This is just as bad. Oh my God, right?
I can't wait for JD Vance. What do you mean? Elon's running for president? You don't have to be a citizen anymore? Oh no.
They've changed that. Oh my goodness. What? Executive order. Oh my god.
It was his final executive order? Oh.
What? Oh no. What about but my 14th Amendment
I just wanted to say I find it terribly inefficient that we can't elect the smartest human being in the world just because they weren't born here, you know? Talking about efficiencies here, guys.
It's yeah, and it's
that brings me to a question I actually did have for you. So like, even with all this concern for slashing so quickly and like, how precise is Trump being when especially a lot of the strategy seems to be like, let's offer them a small carrot to see how many of them quit. Let's see if we can get them to jump ship right now. There's a good argument to be said that you're not going through there surgically and keeping all the good people that you're definitely going to need. You're just kind of slashing and burning in the same way that our concerns about the deportations. Like, are we targeting all the criminals, or are we rounding up restaurant workers because it makes the numbers look better, and the people that I would kind of like to see last? However, if you're going to take the opposite side of that and steelman it, I think the argument would be something along the lines of like, well, look what we just got done with. We have a limited window. There's only one term. We have 4 years, and maybe just 2 with the House and the Senate, because that could turn against them in 2 years. So we got 2 good years here to try to finally tackle this corruption within government, cut the fat out, and that maybe it's actually prudent to be this heavy-handed, because you never know what's going to happen next, and you never know how much of this is going to get re-implemented by the next president when they just turn around and just say everything, hey, take backseats on everything Trump did.
Right, 4 years of EOs undone. Yeah, that is really interesting position, and it's one that makes sense to me, that you've got to move quick. It's interesting, kind of that strategy that's being implemented, right? Elon Musk is very what's it? I can't remember. Either this is somebody paraphrasing him or he said it, but the paraphrase is, make as deep as cuts, make deeper cuts than might be necessary and fix the problems down the road. But you've got to come in here, and it's like with Twitter, right? He came in and slashed what was 80-something% of the workforce, and Twitter ended up working just fine. And that's my
favorite lefty crybaby argument right now, is like, I can't believe he ruined Twitter. And I'm like, it's still going, guys. Like, right. Twitter's fine. I don't know if y'all noticed.
You may not like what the platform is now, but the actual Twitter as a thing is just fine.
Yeah, if he turned around and sold it today, that number's probably at least 44 billion still. Like, it's not right. This hasn't depreciated tremendously.
Right. And so it does make sense. And I think we can look at Argentina. And I think that we have to accept that regardless of whatever policies and positions you do or don't want people in power to take, they're going to have consequences, and there's going to be blowback, and some of it's going to suck. You can't bet 1,000 on this. And are we willing to accept losing? It's like, what I guess the real question is, like, as Americans, what are we willing to lose? If it means in 2 years, you can look at it and be like, look, this is how much waste was cut. And it's like, yeah, sure. It sucks that, all of these people got deported. It sucks that this thing that we now look back at it, we are going to try to figure out how to bring it back, because now it turns out that was a good thing that we shouldn't have got. But you
liberals are right. Everybody's lawn's a mess.
It's like but look at all of this government waste that we eliminated. And that's the most interesting thing about this, is that there's not a lot of people that are keep the fat. You know what I mean? There's not a lot of people. And I was listening to Sperconish this morning, and even he was just like, I'm really intrigued to see what Elon Musk is going to do, because maybe he's like, maybe you need kind of that pit bull entrepreneur private sector attitude to try to tackle. He's like, I know that there's massive amounts of waste going on. And it's like, so and that's the question. Are we supposed to be upset about a bunch of, like a room full of 14 dudes in t-shirts and sports coats combing through stuff, if all of a sudden, like, oh, hey, we figured out how to cut the federal budget by $1 trillion next year? Well, how upset am I supposed to be about
let's see how that works. I feel pretty good about that.
and I think you do have to move aggressively, because you do have a limited time. And I know it sounds like a lot, but 2 years in the world of politics, at the pace and rate that government moves, it's 3 months in a regular person's life. It's not a lot of time that you have to make moves. And so I don't know.
Yeah, politicians are like they live like in dog years. That's why they have to consume so much adrenochrome to look like the rest of us.
Absolutely, to keep the lizard skin on.
Keep that
And
lizard skin
when I was listening to Pod Save America today, one of the arguments that he was talking about is like, well, you just can't. There are processes and ways that we do things, and he has no respect for the bureaucracy and how it moves, and there's a reason, and they're just like, bro, that is a bad art. If that's your argument, it's like
one of those, you're
we
not
can't
sending the
cut
message you
federal
think you're
government.
sending.
Right? It's like we can't cut the federal government because it's not going through the bureaucracy. There are procedures in place, and they're not being followed. And who cares if we have to waste more tax dollars? Procedures, bureaucracy, and it's like, bro, that is not a good argument.
That makes me think about Zelensky. Did you see his big interview the other day where he told something like 100 billion of the 177
we
billion?
Don't know where it went.
It never even made it to us. And I know from his perspective, the spigot's starting to come to a slow drip as of late. And he's running out of experienced soldiers. So he's very concerned about keeping that spigot running. And so he's going out there to make this heartfelt. And he thinks to himself, oh, Americans think they've given enough money and they're starting to get fed up. I'll explain to them how we haven't even received all of the money.
Over
so you guys have got to give more, because over half of that money just got embezzled and dashed out of the country, all your tax money. And it's like, man, one of his strategists should have been in his ear and been like, the conversation in America right now is kind of exactly this is why they shouldn't be sending their money here from half of the country, the half that just won the election, mind you.
Right.
I thought that was a jarring moment for me of just like, buddy, I don't think you understand the message you're sending right now.
For sure. In a world where David Axelrod is having to tell Democrats, do not die on the USAID hill because Americans are fed up with foreign spending. You know what I mean? When that's coming from Democratic strategists to them be like, well, we really need some more money because we don't even know what happened to half of it. It's that's not a good argument.
That's kind of the indictment on us right now, sir. That's kind of what the reason we lost this election in large part is that exact sentiment.
And it's one of those things. But I mean, we called it then. It's got to be true now. Now it's the second worst trade in history to AD and Luca, but trading Brittany Griner for Homeboy, it's like we knew what, like when he got released, what's going on.
You knew what was happening.
You need somebody back in the game that knows that area, that's still got all the contacts, that's going to help you funnel lethal aid out of the country to all of these black markets, so the CIA can then buy it, and then you know what I mean. It's the Iran Contra thing. It's not new. It's a 40-year-old playbook. And
now I want to bring this up. You were talking about Mr. Axelrod. I heard an alternative theory that may be what Axelrod is saying, but the real reason he's telling Democrats to drop this one, leave it alone, is kind of from what I was saying earlier, where I'm pretty unabashed about saying this is part of the CIA's wing of purchasing assets in foreign countries and setting up opportunities to be economic hitmen. This is gender studies money to Pakistan. 3 years ago when that happened, the first thing I said on the podcast was that feels like coup money to me. And then we watched a failed coup happen in Pakistan. I think there's a good chance that there's a little bit of that in there, that, hey, guys, we're not talking about this one because this is not a winner for us. When we start looking into the numbers, we'd kind of rather just let this one die.
That's actually a really interesting take. And it's that's a solid perspective, because
if you know what, actually,
that's
here's
really
a prime example of that.
Solid
one
take.
Of the fundings that the USAID partook in was the Wuhan lab. The money for that gain of function research that probably caused this virus to be released into the world and shut down our economy was because of this organization.
There you go. And you know what I mean? That's actually a really good take, Logan. I like that a lot. It's like, nope, no, don't look at that. Let's just let them shut it down. We don't want an audit. Just let the State Department absorb it. Let them all go on leave. Like, let's let that one
fun game to be the head of the DNC and to see all your good drones who've been propagandized and trained for this moment. And they're like, you can't cut a government. And they're like, guys, we're gonna let this one go. Please don't raise a lot of shit on this.
For sure, that makes a lot of sense.
Let's talk about immigrants instead.
Yeah, right. Don't pick a better battle. That checks out 100%. That's a really good take, man. I got nothing to add to it except, yep, probably
so.
Probably, right? And it's either one of the two, right? It's either that you can't, and it might be both, right? And or maybe there's a combination of it. It's like, look, we can't fuel the outrage machine. It gets overloaded. Who cares about foreign development? Or it's like, don't look behind the curtain, because if we start digging in there, it's not good for anybody.
I think if it was a real boon of a winner, if everything they did was just for aid, it would be pretty prudent upon the DNC to go, hey, this is our main focus. Trump just cut out the largest humanitarian support organization in the world. But it's not for that. It's for, what is the acronym for again? United States Ambassadors of America, International Development.
It's just international development, pretty much is what it is.
Which, guys, nobody assumes China's doing all that development in Africa and that little bit they did in Greenland out of the goodness of their heart. The only time any of us are fooled into thinking it's done out of the goodness of your heart is when it comes from our good old government.
Right.
And if you haven't noticed, this is kind of the whole purpose of this podcast, is to disillusion you of that silly idea.
That's fair. That is very fair. No, that makes a lot of sense. And I am sure that when if we were to do like a deep dive into that organization, I'm sure that we would find there's probably some monies going to good places. Now, whether or not tax dollars of America should be funding that's a different conversation. But it's like, I'm sure that there's some people that are going to show up to get their antivirals of a disease, and they're going to be like, sorry, can't help you. And, people are going to die because of the aid stopped flowing.
Mm-hmm.
That's just the reality of it. And the question is how many people are we okay with dying from potentially the goodness of this organization, what it does, when it's coupled with all of the other, corruption, coup money, yada, yada. And I haven't dug enough into the numbers to know what their budget is, what they really do. I'm just shooting from the hip, but I'm sure that it's not all evil. I'm sure that you could point to at least a thing that it does that's good. It's like the world's a better place because that organization is funded. Now, does that outweigh the cost? I don't know. But it is interesting. We're living through the very real trolley problem. Track A is this, and now we get to pull, and we're pulling track B with Donald Trump. It's like you can just keep on funding the government. Everything moves on according to plan. And it's like before you can even finish the sentence, he's just like, track B. And it's like, what's on track B? We don't know.
We're not sure, but it's moving fast. And the track's going downhill, I'll tell you that much.
And it's on track B, and we're about to find out what's down there.
I just gave a Google search for what's the best thing the USAID has ever done, and it's brought up some stuff about teaching just less than 300,000 kids how to read in 380 schools, which is like, okay, that's fine. Something. That probably doesn't outweigh the damages of you funneling money into countries to overthrow governments, but it's cool that some more kids can read.
Right? It's like that's fine. I'm not upset about like kids learn how to read, but also it's like
it's cool. I like kids that can read typically better than kids who can't.
Right. Right.
In my experience,
but also it's like that's you know what I mean. If that's the best that you can do, it's a very uncompelling argument.
The few things I threw against the wall there that they've done in the name of the CIA's world building, it seemed to be, I will sacrifice 300,000 children reading to get rid of that.
It's also crazy that the Google search, and I don't know if this is right, if it's listening and it's tailored, but it's like, what does top one the Department of Education do? The second one is USAID do.
There you go. I imagine it's hot in the search engines.
I'm sure, right?
The last couple days.
I mean, it's one of those organizations that I've heard of, but
there's two reactions in American politics right now. It's like, fuck yeah, Trump just banned the USAID, or how the hell could he get rid of the USAID? And then both of them went to Google immediately after to find out what that acronym stood for.
It's like, wait a minute, what is this?
Wait, why am I outraged? Let me find out. I had an interesting one that came up as I was kind of like mining for all the negatives on Trump this morning. And one I had not considered at all is the idea that bringing all of these employees back from remote work into offices may prove to be more expensive for the U.S. government because you have a cost of living adjustment in a lot of these areas. And if you live in Topeka, Kansas, who gives a shit? Right. But if we call you back to D.C., we have to give you this increase in your budget for cost of living adjustment. That was an interesting one.
Yeah.
Now, when you cut half of them in the process, maybe that's not true.
It's right. It's one of those things. It's like, yeah, the ones we do have to relocate. That one, like, I'm very ambivalent on the workers must be in the office. One, you're right. It's like if you were abusing remote work to just like dick off and make a massive amount of salary, well, then by all means, don't let the door hit you on the way out. But there was somebody called in a month ago about when they were talking about potentially this could happen. And he's like, look, I work for the federal government. I'm a federal government employee. I have there's like 7 or 8 of us, and we all work remote. And we've all been remote for the last, 15 years. And he goes, if we have to it's like, we're all just going to quit. He's like, well, we're not going to move to DC. Right. And I can't remember what it was. It was something like very narrow and specific where it's like, we're not one of those overbloated government agencies. It's like, we do our job well. And we're the only ones that do our job. And he's like,
every government employee ever tried to
sure, but it's like, I know somebody very close to my personal life that is technically, and not even technically, is a federal employee that works remote. And if they say that she's got to go back to the office, she's gonna be like, you guys can go fuck yourself.
The private sector then.
She's like, you guys are gonna go fuck yourself, and good luck trying to find somebody to replace me tomorrow, because I'm not giving you my 2 weeks. And you know what I mean? And all of a sudden, and I know what this person does, and they're going to be like, oh, maybe we can make an exception.
Maybe we could figure it out. I think to be fair, there is already an exception in there that if your department head deems it, so you can, now all those department heads are appointed by Trump at this point in time. So that they're probably not going to be the most lenient in the world to the excuses, but I don't know. Maybe that's the backside of it. When we're watching Doge cut all this, so we'll see how good the appointed Trump officials identify the most important jobs who are not replaceable individuals, and maybe that's part of that. Cut deeper than you need to, and we'll sew it up afterwards that you were talking about earlier.
Sure.
That, maybe the prudent argument is upon us, and it's time to get this done before the Democrats can foil our plans, and we're going to go ahead and just get rid of them, and we'll figure it out after that. We will find somebody who can adequately do this job, or otherwise we'll just tank whatever this thing is.
For sure. And there's certain things that, and I imagine that there are certain areas that you don't want lapses in, and I have to be very narrow and tailored about what I say, but it's like, I know what this person does, and it wouldn't be good if that job's not being done tomorrow. You know what I mean? It's not a good thing. If that's
you said she's, I'm assuming she's a DEI hire anyway, so she can't be that.
Probably. This is
that is a rough treatment. You brought the helicopter plane crash up earlier and how that's being hit with so much DEI stuff. From my understanding, that exact airstrip is a huge issue anyway, because it has a 45-degree angle connection with another airstrip that is essentially the same length as an aircraft carrier. So the plane, I believe the plane in question was coming in to land on that strip. They have to come in at an angle and bank super sharply over their helipad in order to hit that strip. So it's like that particular one has gotten so much steam, and it's almost like I don't even know if that was her fault. It's tough to say, right? I'm sure there'll be an official investigation. The day after that happened, a retired airline pilot called into Smerconish and was talking about that. He's like, dude, that's an approach that he goes, there's a lot of approaches.
Doesn't really matter. You can kind of be on autopilot. He's like, that's one that he's like, I enjoyed flying in there because you have to fly your plane. He's like, you got to fly down. He's like, you have to fly down the river, and then you got to make this hard bank, and you've got to like get yourself level in a really short amount of time. And he's like, it's a tough place to fly in and out of, and I enjoy the challenge. And it's
the gentleman that was telling me about it was specifically saying too that like the angle you come in at, you end up putting the bottom of the plane towards the helicopter, which means it can't see any lights, and you're above it. And the clearance, I think, was like they really only account for 100 feet of clearance anyway. And if you're whatever this word for how high you are in the air,
your altitude, your altimeter,
altitudeometer.
Yeah, that's it.
Apparently, if those are a degree off, that's about 50 feet. So you're already like within 100 feet of a helicopter, and if your equipment's off just a little bit, now you're not even sure if you're that far away.
It does make you wonder, right? And I don't know who to blame. I don't know. I'm not out. It's horrible, right? That I actually saw a little news flash that they finally recovered all the bodies today. Everybody's finally been, picked up off the bottom.
Was it really?
Of the river.
I never confirmed if it was true. Was it really like a young skating team?
There was some. I think there was a small portion of them.
It
wasn't a large percentage. You know what I mean? It was like I think there's like 7 teenagers.
I guess it's just heart-wrenching, and as I even say that, it's like I guess any plane that goes down, you can find the sad story of the young people, but it is depressing to hear. Like when Kobe died in the helicopter, it's like, oh, that sucks. Kobe died.
It sucks,
and then you hear his daughter's on the helicopter.
Like, it sucks. It sucks.
Really sucks, man.
Yeah,
that's a kid that had a long future in front of her that's just gone now.
For sure, and it really just makes you wonder in an airport that is notoriously hard to land and take off in, because it's like the approach is limited because you can't fly over the White House. The White House is super, the White House is really close. All of those federal buildings, no fly zones over there. So there's only a very narrow, specific approach.
Why do they care about that? Have they had issues with planes in the White House before?
I don't think the White House specifically, allegedly,
facetious.
Allegedly, there was this plane that hit the Pentagon, but show me the engine block.
Let me see some wings on the side of that.
I'd like to see that engine block, but the passport made it. But
it is amazing. They really should make planes out of whatever they make passports out of, as strong as those are.
It's strong, absolutely, really dude. We much better. There's, but it's the real question is like, what are they doing training there? It's like, why are there military training exercises in the same, it's why are you guys doing that? It's a busy runway. It's flights in and out. Like, go train somewhere else. You got all this, what I mean? This like Virginia's south of you. Go play in the woods over the CIA in Langley. You know what I mean? There's a lot of other places you could be flying instead of like the direct flight path for planes coming in and out of that airport.
Have rescue missions out there by the CIA labs. You don't know what kind of chupacabra they'll run into in the woods. Find these Bigfoot.
Right. But it's I don't know. That's the real thing. It's like, what are you guys even doing there? Why?
So much more than Matt. So many horrifying things.
I know. I'm not talking about.
Oh, you mean I was talking about CIA labs?
Yeah, no, I'm talking about like what are you guys doing? Like flying training missions over the river like that. It's. I don't get it.
This is a hell of an aside, but it's one I want to go into in a later episode, so I'm just going to say it now. But and a lot of people count this to like, oh, this is the CIA trying to flood the market with all the silly stuff. Did you know that the CIA has disclosed documents to the public about astral projection being a real thing?
Mm-hmm. I've gone down that rabbit hole before, not deep enough or recently enough to talk about it right now, but those were classified in like the 50s and the 60s, and then they got declassified as time went on. But this was something that they looked heavily into.
All that stairs at goat stuff is there was a lot of that kind of stuff going on, man. A lot of psychedelic. No, what's the word I'm looking for? A lot of psychic, a lot of telekinetic.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, right.
Astro projection research. The CIA put some serious money into.
Did Lee Harvey Oswald? Did he knowingly kill JFK, or is he being controlled by a CIA mind machine?
Was he just an avatar for Lyndon B. Johnson?
That's such a funny image, dude.
I've just been re-listening to the Game of Thrones series. It makes me think of them trying to wake Lyndon B. Johnson up from his bed like they did Stannis Baratheon as his shadow demon murders his younger brother. Like the king was safe in his bed. It was odd how we couldn't wake him.
It's oh man, that's yeah. We should do an episode on that one.
Definitely want to. I brought up the Gansfeld effect earlier today too. Is one I haven't looked into, but I think that's another CIA one. And if you didn't get it from the message I sent you, it's essentially like you put on noise canceling headphones, you turn on a light, you make goggles basically out of one ping pong ball you've cut in half and rubber bands so that the two ping pong balls go over your eyes, so all you can see is white. And if you stare into that light, apparently you see some of the most vivid hallucinations possible to mankind.
That's crazy.
And it's that simple. But I think, again, that was another one of these like research projects that kind of came along the same time they were figuring out what dropping acid every single day for a full year does to a human being's brain kind of thing.
Right. Did you ever see that Netflix series? And I'm sure that's been yanked off for quite some time, called Wormwood.
That sounds familiar, but I don't think I ever watched it actually.
That one was, if I don't know where, you can probably find it on Amazon Prime. You can buy it. I'm sure you can buy Children on Amazon Prime, to be fair. So I think you can find anything there. But it was utterly bizarre, and it's told from the sun. So like this guy's it is.
It is.
Oh, sweet. It is a really good series. So it's told by the son, and the son's an old man. He's in his 60s or 70s, about his dad, who after he was like part of the CIA MK Ultra thing, and he was dosed with LSD to see, and they dosed them to see like what's the breaking point, and he was going to spill the beans on it. And so I'll just say like the whole episode, the whole series is about why this guy thinks the CIA killed his father. And it is really interesting.
Right. We'll look into that. I've definitely scrolled past that before. It's amazing how crude a lot of it comes down to when you think of these, like, well, he's a scientist. He's doing research on like some of the most intricate, especially an intelligent scientist. Like, and then if you ever get a look at the research, they're like, yeah, we gave this guy an ungodly amount of acid or
just to see what happened.
Oh yeah, we cut the heads off of one dog and sewed them onto the body of another to see how long it would survive. And you're like, what the fuck? And they're like, yeah, guys, this is how you get data. This is science. This is I don't know why you guys are so surprised.
There is something to be said about that, right? I mean, the reason that we have an extensive knowledge of the human body.
I wonder when the first autopsy's
been going on for a long time. But a lot of the modern things that we knew about the human body came from, two kind of desperate regimes that didn't have the greatest human rights track record. Like at the end of World War II, we looked at Unit 731 in Japan, and we're like, oh my God, this is first off horrific how you have all of this data, but it's like, this is actually a lot of good data. And it would really be a dishonor to all of the victims if we just burn it's like the best way that we can honor the victims is to cover up these war crimes and then use the data to then progress, human science and flourishment.
How did you guys find out what the correct dosage of acid was? Well, we made 700 guys go insane by giving them too much acid, and then we found the right dose.
Right? And it's like, what'd you guys do with it? Next question, please.
We'd rather not disclose industry secrets. So the first recorded autopsy was performed on Julius Caesar, and it was
why?
Here's my. I know that was exactly my first question. Was why did they feel like they needed to perform an autopsy?
Yeah,
it was to determine which of his 23 stab wounds was fatal.
Oh, wonderful.
Does it matter?
You
stabbed him 23 times.
I'm about to say, like, how do you?
I'm going to say the third one through the 18th one are the ones that killed him.
Yeah, right. I know the story is it's supposed to be Brutus's. He's the last knife. It was the fatal wound. But it's also like, yeah, that's why? Like he got and also how can you can't tell that. You can't look at that mangled body and be like, this is the knife that got him. And
you might be able to tell after 3. But 23, what are you even looking at?
You're looking at
that chest looks like hamburger meat.
What's the right analogy? Like
it's an autopsy. You don't even need to bring your own blade to. You just kind of like pick a hole and pull it apart.
Right, you just kind of like
this one looks big enough. I'll start here.
Dude, that's crazy. That's like why? It's like we would like to know which stab wound was all of them. You know what I mean? It's like the combination of them. It's like
yeah, we're gonna count all these as fatal past that first one that got him in the shoulder. After that, I'm thinking the rest of them might have got him, guys.
Right, the one
it worked out.
So yeah, we'll roll off the one in the shoulder, the one in his forearm, and the one in his foot. But then all of those that are center mass, we'll just let's just I
always like the image of a bunch of powdered pussy politicians in their togas too, and it took them 23 stabs to kill a man. Like what a bunch of ineffective assassins that it took you 23 stabs. Yeah, it was like me
it's like me trying to slap the water. One of those things.
Like you gotta find some firmness in the wrist in order to get to the vital organs. He's just taking flesh wounds. I wonder if after like 15 stabs, Caesar's like, Jesus Christ, are you guys gonna kill me or not? What the fuck is this?
Right,
death by 1,000 cuts thing we're doing here?
Yeah, I know that. At least in this, right? And it's like Dan Carlin. Yeah, even if ancient history is not true, you have to believe it. Kind of want to on that assumption. I know that in both the telling of how him and Pompey died, at a certain point they cover their face with their robe. So you don't so people can't look at them why they die. And I'm sure you know what I mean, probably around stab number 10, as you just kind of like wrap your head, you know what I mean? And you just all right, you just go to the ground and you go to the ground, cover your face and wait for them to finish.
Maybe 23 stabs is maybe we're putting the blame on the wrong side. Maybe that's more of a testament to the fight of Julius Caesar and the dog he had in his heart to fight off.
Takes more than
8 men for.
It
takes more than 22 blades to kill Jesus. Oh, okay, that one will work. That one got me.
It's like nobody stabbed Julius Caesar 21, 22 times and lives.
All right, guys, I'm trying to say something here.
Oh man, that's good. I'd like to. Can we take a little 2-minute little break, reset, and come on back?
I like it.
Let's see. What do we have? We just settled on feeding the ducks.
I like feeding the ducks.
It's a solid one. All right, cool. We'll be right back. Ba-ba-ba-bow. This episode is brought to you by Hilton. Do you need to shoot a CEO? Well, come stay at a Hilton. We have room for you. I was talking to my business partner about this last night. It as we were talking about it, kind of the audacity of kind of what occurred set in. And sure, it's outrageous that somebody went and shot somebody in broad daylight in New York City, all that stuff. The most audacious thing, though, is that guy thought that he could walk outside without having a dude with him. That's the most audacious thing about all of this. Like, you are a CEO of a company that profits off denying people's claims. You don't get to make several $1 billion a year by giving everybody what they want. And you think that it's okay to just walk outside with not even a single dude. I mean, like, think of all of the like B-list celebrities that have at least a security guard with them. That, you know, at least one dude. You thought that it was like, that's the most audacious thing about that entire thing is, oh, you just thought it was safe to go outside.
Do you think that it's maybe seen within, like, especially the liberal elite actor circles as like a handout to the black community, or is it more racist that they only hire black security guards? It's kind of a little telling, like, oh, I'm terrified of this man. Must be a good security guard.
Yeah, maybe. I've never looked into like the psychology and kind of the profile that makes a good security guard. You probably want somebody that had a lot of hands-on experience with fighting, you know, maybe somebody that has not much to lose. And, you know, maybe it's cool. You know, it's like, maybe it's
Are you just describing black people right now? What's going on?
I mean, it's not all of them. All right. Oh, like,
clearly satirical.
Like, do you want Obama as your security guard? No way, bro.
Not so much. No.
No.
Although, you want me maybe if I'm like knee deep in water, Obama's a good option.
No, because then you'll just drown, bro. It's like, you don't want me as your security guard, and I know I'm like, do I count because I'm half? It's
it would count, except your other half's gay.
Well, there you go, folks. Heard it here. I'm just disqualified. I think that's just the most outlandish thing of all of this is that you just thought it was safe to go outside. Without,
if it's any consolation, I'm pretty sure that the CEOs of this country have been cured of that notion.
For sure.
I think they all got some security now.
No doubt. The days of, yeah, it was a window. I was actually,
you know who definitely has security now is whoever the new CEO of United Healthcare is. That motherfucker's got some serious security.
For sure. And because the stock dropped, you can justify it. You know, otherwise it's like, sorry, occupational hazard to being CEO of United Healthcare.
Man, what a great spot to step into too. Like the media boon over United Healthcare causes this huge stock drop. And in the idea of like outrage investing, you just buy the dip. It's gonna go back up. It's one of the, if not the largest insurance broker in our nation.
I'm sure.
And to be the CEO, like, man, next quarter, you get to talk all this shit about when you took over and how low the stock was. And how much I raised our stock 300%, guys.
I'm actually
all I did was hide in my basement, not get shot by another Luigi.
Right. Let's see. So over the last, 6 months. So when did he get shot? Probably right around this time of this really nasty dip. Started December. Is that right?
Looking her up.
Or was it? Yeah, tell me when he got shot, because I'm really interested looking at this little 6 month chart.
It was December 4th.
Yep, well, that checks out. Because it took a shit on December 5th.
I've talked about that for years and years, and I've never actively consistently invested in this outrage investing thing, and it seems like it hits every time. It's something I've been just leaving money on the table with.
Yeah, so if you would have bought at the lowest point, it would have been December 17th, and it was trading at $485 a share. it is now up to $5.39.
Yeah, I mean, there's a 20% profit in 2 months.
Yeah, not bad. And
It's pretty damn good.
well, the shitty thing about it is that it's like I am too poor to have enough meaningful capital to throw at those dips, right? Like it's like if I was able to scrounge up enough money to buy 4 shares, you know what I mean? Oh,
This is this is exactly how I feel about bragging about my sports gambling wins. And I'm like, yeah, I got this at plus 800 3 months ago. You guys didn't see this coming. You're all idiots. And like, dang, how much money did you win? I'm like, $35.
It's just one of those functions, you know what I mean? It's the stock market, all of that stuff, like you have to have money to make money, because if you can only buy a share or two of, it's like you're never going to get big gains. You got to be able to throw some cash
Right.
at, like if you have $40,000 to throw into United Healthcare at that dip, you're really
that
stoked
extra 10
today.
grand there's pretty
You know
cool.
what I mean? That's really good. If you can only buy 2 shares, you're like, oh yeah, I got $40 extra. This is great.
This is a fair point.
Yeah. Let's see. We can kind of round off any more political topics. I do have some pop culture to finish off with.
I apologize. I have to keep looking over at my phone because it didn't transfer my notes for some reason.
Oh, gotcha. It's all good.
So I'd seen 2 competing figures when it comes to regulation costs in America.
Okay.
Obviously, we got both sides of the political spectrum very well represented. So one side, the federal regulation of America costs $2 trillion per year, according to the Competitive Enterprise Institute, which comes out to about $14,000 per American. And then the opposite end of that, they come out with almost the exact opposite idea of like, well, regulation actually ends up saving Americans money in the long run, and can be as much as a $20 billion increase in American revenue. But even they admitted that on the conservative side, we're looking at $280 billion a year in regulations that
spent on regulation, and it's
the inertia lost from regulation as well, not just like the enforcement of regulation.
Okay, I was going to say, like, is this the hard cost money of hiring inspectors, bureaucrats?
No, it's everything down to like the interruption in the free market, the delay of money exchanging hands because of regulation and the time lost, but it's still like a huge number.
That's a huge number.
Either way, even if it is the conservative number of 280 billion, like I mean, $280 billion versus $2 trillion. It's a lot of money.
It's very real. And without getting into details, like I could spin you a sob story about how expensive it is to have you know what I mean? It's between
sob story I've been listening to for a couple of years from you.
You know, it's like between regulation and then like profits lost. It's a substantial number. And it's not even one of those. It's like, because everything's substantial, it's all relative. It's one of those numbers that's just like, it's a lot of money to anybody. And so it doesn't shock.
And all for, at least in your case, all to come down on somebody from the government telling you whether or not you can sell a plant that God put on this green earth.
It's not even that. They're arguing about like what type of plugs I had to have. You know what I mean? That's not even up for debate.
You can grow your drugs, but you better be environmentally friendly about it.
It's that what type of plug? So you can't use that plug. You have to replace all 80 plugs in this place, and they have to be these because those aren't good enough. Yeah, it's those type of things. But I will remind myself. I need to reach out to Matt Mitchell. I ran into him not too long ago, and I would love to have him on and talk about
always
the balance to try to strike. Because at a certain point, right, if you're starting at the bottom, moving up, at a certain point, regulation makes things better and it makes things safer and quality of life goes up. But at a certain point, and that's got to be the conversation. Like, where's the tipping point? At what point does regulation no longer serve the people, and it now becomes like a self-serving for the bureaucracy?
None of us want to eat milk with Ebola, you know?
Right.
Like there are things that most of us are not all that upset about regulating. But the concern being that there's such an over-regulation, and also
Right.
with anybody who would contest that our lobbyist system has gotten a firm grasp on our
Legal
political
bribing.
system, right, and legal bribing, and that these industries aren't heavily owned by all of these same people that are wanting to regulate
Sure.
them, and then in turn is used to kind of box out smaller businesses from coming around. There, to your point, there are things that even us radical anarchist libertarians are not like going to Twitter and wringing our hands in the air about how we got to stop regulating the quality of our food in this country. Like, there are certain things we're not nearly as worried about. But there's a lot of things that are insane, and as anything in government goes, it only grows itself and finds new ways to decide. The example I heard was the Historical Building Commission in New York, and when they were founded in the 60s, they found some 30,000 buildings that they didn't want to bulldoze in the city of New York for historical significance.
Okay.
And you're like, that's really cool that these buildings that, anywhere where George Washington fucked to some hooker, they're going to keep that building. But then it goes to the point where, like, it's still an organization today that is every bit as well funded as it ever was. And every year they find one or two more important buildings not to bulldoze. Not necessarily because these buildings are amazing historical markers, but because if they don't find a new building, what the fuck is their purpose?
For sure. And that's the flip side of this conversation, right? Is it's a very tough balancing act that I'm going through personally. I want to see the federal government slashed. I want to see but you know what I mean? I just want to see it reduced in any meaningful way. I am down. What I don't want to see happen, though, is whatever semblance of a constitution that we still have in this country. I don't want to see that fall by the wayside, right? We can argue whether or not the Constitution is effective at stopping, right? That's a fair argument, right? But I don't want to see all of a sudden entire parts of the federal budget that have been, allocated by Congress, which is their constitutional right to do, to then have the president step in like, no, I don't want to do that, because the flip side is always possible. And that's kind of that check down the road. It's like, if you can abolish all of these departments that may or may not be serving a purpose by executive order, well, then what happens when the president down the road wants to be like, well, I'd like to add 20 new departments, and to hell with what Congress appropriates. I don't care. Executive order. We'll figure out where the extra 10 trillion comes from. We'll add it to the deficit. I don't want to see that. So, and that's kind of the dancing within the perimeters that anybody that's super stoked about what's happening like, that's the guardrail that we need to have in the back of our minds. Like, even though you like the result, if the action that gets you there gives your political opponent or the government, right? Like, you might not be a red, like an R or a D. You might just be, somebody that's like, I just don't want to see government get more power. And if government power is stripped away from executive order, well, then it can certainly, if it sets the precedence for it to be added down the road, it's like, so it gotta have the balance.
Yeah. I mean, you have to consider at the same time, we have this massive new unelected apparatus that's going around slashing all this stuff. And even the most fervent free market anarcho-capitalist like myself, who would lay out the same argument I just did, a purist, the only honest, theologically correct. Even if you agree with all of that regulatory capture stuff I was just talking about, and how regulations really only used to boon the largest of our corporations, as it's been captured by them and this law is getting written by them anyway. Think about who's in charge of this organization that's going to cut all of this stuff right now, and the one that's deciding what regulations are and are not effective in our government. I mean, Elon Musk, maybe he's the good billionaire. Maybe he's the one.
Nah.
I'm skeptical that there are any of them.
He's a fucking super villain, bro.
Right.
He is.
And now it's those same people that would be saying, hey, the reason we need this is because this whole entire lobby system is captured by the big corporations anyway. Well, now you have the CEO and the head of one of several of those large corporations being the one to decide what the future looks like for the ability of corporations to grow in this new space.
For sure. It's probably a sensitive spot that a lot of people that are on the Trump train don't want to acknowledge, because right when you're winning,
Yeah,
it's
we're in the middle of the
nice.
parade right now, man.
For sure, it's nice when
Travis Kelce's still drinking beer on the float.
when you're celebrating your triumph as you enter back into Rome. It's really hard to sit there and be like, did we just give Julius Caesar too much power? It's a really tough one to have in the moment. It's like I don't know. It's like, I know there's the whole like republic, but we kind of just like crossed the Rubicon and dissolved the republic and fought a civil war. It's like, have we overstepped ourselves? It's like,
I'm gonna just soak
marching.
up the night. I'm gonna have a good time today.
Right.
We'll worry
There's
about
probably
the rest of
some
that
bar.
tomorrow.
There's probably some bar winches to be had. So it's easy to gloss over that. And I think that a lot of things that Trump has done, it is outside of the first off constitutional authority, but that hasn't mattered, right? It's been an overextension of that for a very long time.
About that? We're in so many countries without congressional authority. It's not a big deal.
That's not new. But what is new is the overt way that it is, like the heavy-handedness. That is pretty new. To try to, it's like Richard Nixon. There's a whole reason that Congress passed a law about, like, if Congress passes a budget and appropriate funds, the president must spend it. And they did that because Richard Nixon pulled this, back in the 70s. They funded something. He's like, well, I'm just not going to spend it. He's like, well, the hell with you guys. And like, no, bro, you have to.
We have already allocated this money to be spent.
And it's a tough one. I think that, back to the Elon thing, I don't know if we're giving enough weight to the serious conflict of interest that's going on. Right, you're going to all of a sudden outsource a lot of oversight, a heavy advisory role to the president, to a guy that has a direct vested interest in gutting the FAA. You know what I mean? It's
also a guy who, one, has, to your point, the vested interest. Two, is a billionaire, and most of us kind of agree there probably aren't any altruistic billionaires.
Sure,
so
I'm sure
probably
the billionaire doesn't exist.
Very much likely not a great person. And three, we almost universally all agree he's smarter than all of us, which is also terrifying.
For sure. If you can build, if you're catching rockets, dude, wow, I can't compete with that. I don't even know where to start to even launch.
You know how fast we're going to get to Mars when he gets all these other billionaires bankrupt around him and he's the only one left standing?
It is and that's probably something that's been buried, right? And that's part of the brilliance, and you got to give credit where it's due about kind of the, hey, look over here, shiny object that Trump's done, because and this is one of those things, I like the fact that the government budget is being scrutinized, the department, that's all great, but it's like, did we really have to give it to the let's be fair, right? If you're a tech billionaire, you're authoritarian by nature. You rule with an iron fist. Democracy is not you don't care. You don't care about others.
All accounts I've heard, Mr. Musk is a bit of a slave driver on the job site.
You know what I mean? The principles of a liberal society are not anything that you're interested in if you're a tech billionaire. You have ruled with an iron fist. That's how you've gotten stuff done. And that's probably why you're so wealthy, right? You can disregard a lot of things, like who cares, profits over people. Are we really sure that that's the person that we want?
Do you think it's possible that, being that Elon is on the spectrum, that he is one of the last and possibly the greatest DEI hire in American history? He's African American too, for what that's worth.
Well, that gets them really upset when you say that. They hate that. That gets the left in a tizzy. It I don't know if this is quite the same. It kind of reminds me of like when the Nazis are talking about like what the pure Aryan race is, like none of those guys fit that. Like Hitler doesn't fit the pure Aryan race. Joseph Goebbels, you know what I mean? Like none of those guys in the Third Reich like fit the description of what the. And it's one of those like you're screaming about DI hire, and it's like, bro, you're semi-retarded. Like you might be the diversity. You're not the diversity hire because you're smarter than us all, and you used your autism in a way that was like beneficial instead of like sneaking grilled cheeses into restaurants.
Yeah, you're using your autism in the evil way and not the cute way, like Love on the Spectrum.
Right. It's a real thing. And so I think we should be very cautious about, just because we're stoked about some of the things that are happening. I don't know. I say I have no idea how everyone else feels. Some people I'm sure a lot of people hate it. Some people are ambivalent. I'm ambivalent. Some of it I like, some of it I hate. I really don't like the overreach that Donald Trump is going. He's reaching for it. Like he is grasping for every bit of power that somebody's willing to cede to him. And I don't like that.
Point earlier of the concerns of his exuberance and continuing of spending on specifically on military stuff. I think Donald Trump is a man who really fancies himself a strong legacy. Yeah. I think there's a reason everything's golden in his apartment and that every building he builds has his name in gold on the front of it. I think that Donald Trump is hungry for an opportunity to cement his legacy as some kind of great president.
Sure.
And expanding the borders for the first time in hundreds of years is a pretty big goal.
It's a big one.
So I do wonder what kind of tension and acceleration we see with like Greenland. Probably maybe the most specific one is it could the ambition of the man we have at president may be a pitfall as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Ambition is one of those things that it's too little of it and you're just a bitch. Mm-hmm. But too much of it, you can be very dangerous. And and I wonder, right, and it's like with all the confirmations, and I'm not blown away that Trump's pretty much going to get his cabinet. I'm a little taken aback that I really thought that like RFK and Tulsi were gonna get some pushback, but that shows you how strong kind of like this MAGA movement is, that these people, like those few senators that were kind of on the cusp, like they're worried about being primaried. They're worried about in 2 years, 4 years, whenever they're up for re-election for Senate.
I would imagine Donald Trump you just saw the popular vote go to Trump. I mean, what does that say to you? If you're going to stand there and be the senator that opposes him, like you might be dying on that hill, man.
Yeah, for sure. And it's really interesting to see the power dynamics shift fully towards Donald Trump. And I know I sent this in a text message, but I underestimated and I have not fully appreciated how great a shift has actually happened. Mm-hmm. To have a senator that was a practicing doctor for 20 something years, all of a sudden cave on RFK. And it's like, well, RFK is going to report back to me frequently. He's like, bitch, dude, once he's confirmed, he's running amok. Like Donald Trump's not checking in on what RFK's doing. Right. You know what I mean? It's like it's RFK show now. And
he's not going to call him on the phone. Nobody wants to have that phone call. That's an annoying voice to listen to.
Yeah, for sure. And
I even got a small kind of microcosm of exactly your point here today, where I saw a guy, a cowboy with full skinny jeans with the belt buckle and the hat and everything. And I walked by as a political conversation was happening between him and my very liberal cashier. Nice. Who's like visibly liberal. Like you can look at the woman and guess which way she voted,
Right.
And the tone that he's having this conversation in is like, well, like, a lot of this did have to happen though. And it's almost soft. It's the tone of victory. It's the tone of somebody who's already won the argument. He's there like trying to educate her. He's trying to be nice about it because there isn't an argument here. It's over right now. You're waiting on, you got to wait in the rushes for us to fuck this up.
For sure. And it's going to be a while. It's, and that's something that I will give Kiefer full credit when he was talking about, like, it's like, you've already won. You just don't know it. And he was saying that months ago. And it's taken every bit of that time between when he said that to now for me to fully digest,
really get it.
actually right to see, and it's like I think Tulsi is a fantastic pick for DNI. RFK, he's a little weird from, you know what I mean? Like
He's
besides
got a lot
his
of
voice, like, he's just kind of weird.
It's a lot of the same thing with Elon with him, where I like a lot of his rhetoric. I like a lot of what he's proposing. I like a lot of what Elon's done so far. I don't think I trust the person deep down
in a position of like great power, right? Like you can,
or just like specifically with RFK, with some of the questionable treatment of women I've seen. Like, I don't know that I'd trust him in the room with my wife alone.
He's got, I know that. Did you ever read or listen to his cousin talk? Like, she wrote a letter to senators about why he shouldn't be confirmed.
I've caught clips of it. I never read it myself.
To have it's, and I don't know like the full details of the word, but just like the Kennedy family has historically been like not like maybe not openly supportive of each other, but they keep their feuds to themselves. They fight in private, right?
Yeah, it's a bad look to let the peasants see your fight.
Absolutely, but to have like for her to call him that's like he likes birds of prey because he's a predator. It's like, oh, that's not a good, like, that's just not good, to have anybody like to have your cousin say that. And you can always argue, oh, she's got political, you know what I mean? You can try to write off what she said, but to have somebody like call you a predator, it's not a good look. Like, it's there's it's definitely just not family
members who disagree with my politics. I don't say anything quite that inflammatory about it.
Right, but they're not gonna be like, Logan's a predator.
He's a
predator.
What I mean?
Yeah.
Not.
It's a strong accusation.
It is a strong accusation.
And it's one of those things. It's like, yeah, he's just weird. Kash Patel, like whatever. But it is interesting though, because these were deemed the more controversial picks. Mm-hmm. And there had to be like a couple of establishment, kind of the bastions of what the Republican Party used to represent, needed to cave for them to get confirmed. And they've all made it out of committee, which means that those bastions looked at their primary in a couple of years and saw, and it's like, I can't win re-election if in 2 years Donald Trump and MAGA is pouring all of the money into this person voted down Tulsi Gabbard. It's like, he's a rhino. And
insert rhino soundbite.
It's fascinating to see just how complete the shift has been. And it's going to be here for a minute. You know what I mean? Like these political swings, they don't happen. They're not in 2-4 year cycles. It's going to be here for a while. I mean, we're looking at a really decade, a couple.
It takes a fuck up. I really believe that. It's similar to, I've heard Kurt Metzger say that about religion, that nobody is talked out of their religion. The culture in is not a logical position.
Sure.
Where you leave your religion is when it fails you. You start like actually going, wait a minute. What happened? What have I done wrong? That's when it kind of hits you. Same thing with political ideology. Like the people who bought into this right-wing stuff for the time being are there until something happens that shakes their faith.
Until the right, grows in power, starts to,
and they'll fuck it up.
They'll fuck it up. Donald Trump will be persona non grata one day, and it might be really soon. You know what I mean? It might be a span of a couple of weeks. We could be on here being like, well, Orange Man bad again. It was nice while it lasted. Like,
we're not saying you lefties haven't got your won't get your I told you so eventually. You're saying right now the man's doing good.
We had a good 6-week run of winning, but now like here we are.
Remember how fun that was before we all got drafted to fight in Israel? It was a good time. Those 6 months were really cool.
Those were good times. I saw. I'll say this, and then I want to say something. I want to switch.
Yeah, we can move. We can move on after this.
There was a Smerconish had this a guy, I can't remember his name, something Penn, to talk about the demographics of, do you lie when you talk about the election? And it's like, do you tell the truth when somebody asks you who you voted for? So like, do you tell the truth? Do you lie, or do you deflect? And what was to them, it was shocking that the highest demographic of those that lie in the election are men. And they couldn't believe it. And they're like, we thought that women would lie to their husband. And I was just like, bros are trying to get laid.
Yes, I was about to say. I was already going to say that.
Dude, of course that men are the highest.
Obviously.
Right? And they just
yeah.
like...
You wonder why that is? Like, it's because guys will fuck goofy chicks with weird liberal ideas in their heads. And chicks won't. So guys hide that shit.
And it was so funny. And I usually don't. I always catch it. I don't ever listen in real time, so I don't ever call in. But when I was listening to that segment, and they were just like, it was so bizarre. We didn't expect the number. I was like, dude, no way.
You boys been married for a hot minute.
I meant to say, you were so far removed from what's going on in the ground today.
That is not a political statement in the least, sir.
No way. They did like, we thought that women would be going home and lying to their husbands about who they voted for. And it's like, nah. It's
maybe they haven't been married that long, because in my experience of having a wife, she's never struggled to share her opinions with me. She's pretty open about anything she has a problem with.
She's never struggled sharing her opinions with anyone, to be fair. You know what I mean? It's like, not once have I ever wondered what's on her mind. She'll let me know. You know what I mean? And sometimes she doesn't have to. Sometimes her look says it all. And you know what I mean? It's like, yes, ma'am, I'll shut up. You know,
we've been trying to work on that. It's like a dog that growls too much. You're like, stop scaring away everybody with your mean face. You're being mean to the other girls. This is why you don't have any girls to hang out with.
This is why no one likes you. I love her. She is awesome. It's great.
I'm super into it.
But you know what I mean? It's one of those things. It's like, I've never wondered. Like, never been curious what's on her mind. She'll let me know.
It's similar to that. I think this correlates with me well, but they say that people who curse more, there's a direct correlation with being more honest. And what it is it's a show of a lack of filter of what you're saying. It's like, yeah, I cuss and say inappropriate things, but it's also because whatever comes in my crazy head is what comes out of my mouth. So it's honest because it's whatever I was thinking.
I didn't even think about that. You know what I mean? It just came out. It's like, what do you mean filter? It's like, that just means it's like your stream of consciousness, brain to mouth, baby.
It just comes right on out. All right, what you got in the pop culture area?
All right. For those that listen, no, I have a deep, deep, deep hatred.
This is about Drake.
Of Drake. Yep. And I just have to say, I didn't watch the Grammys, but I started to see the clips after. And the fact that Kendrick Lamar showed up in a Canadian tuxedo, jeans on jeans, and won 5 Grammys for his diss track.
That's right.
About Drake, and hearing that whole crowd sing A minor. Dude, I don't know how to explain like how stoked.
It's a real good appetizer. It's a real good appetizer for what that Super Bowl performance could be.
I cannot
get
wait.
A juicy ribeye that day,
dude.
Emotions.
I can't. And so Jay-Z is in charge of Super Bowl entertainment. And a couple of weeks ago, because it's it's kind of in the like, are they gonna let him play the song? They're gonna let him do the song. I cannot wait to hear Drake be called a pedophile in front of the largest TV audience. Like, dude, you want to talk about what unites Americans? It's the Super Bowl. More people, you know what I mean? There is one thing that Americans come together statistically more than any event every year, even every 4 years. More people watch the Super Bowl than vote. Yep. I cannot wait to hear Drake get called a pedophile in front of the largest national audience of American gathering. I can't wait to hear that crowd sing with. My heart is so full from the Drake hate that is going on.
This is like some Legends of Old conquest type of shit. Trump needs to find his way on that stage somehow. Get in good with Kendrick. And as he gets to watch the champion of Canada get slayed, he then can go purchase Canada to be the 51st state of the United States afterwards. Like, what better way to like? I'm taking your city as I've destroyed your champion in my wake.
That's Drake's kind of a bitch, and so's Trudeau.
He likes them a little young. Everybody knows they're just a little too young.
They're a little young. It's not good. It's kind of creepy. In fact, it's illegal. And we're cracking down on that. We don't like that one bit. Let the kids be kids, as they say. I just had to bring that up, dude. It's just all of it. The fact that he's in a Canadian tuxedo as he wins 5 Grammys. Dude, Homeboy dropped an album this year that wasn't even didn't win a Grammy for what was a really good album. Nope. It was all diss track. Just him just shitting on Drake. And I love it. And I hope he never recovers. I hope this is the last of Drake. I hope this is just the end of him. And we never have to see him. We never have to hear another release. I hope having 130 million Americans watch him be called a pedophile is enough to like. I hope that. And I really only have
I'd
this
be
type
okay
of
with the end of Drake.
Yeah, and I don't know where my deep hatred for the man's music came from. Because I mean, there's a lot of bad rap out
You
there.
definitely have more disdain for him than I do. And for me, it's a lot of like, aren't all these the same song? Why is this guy the most popular? It's kind of annoying that he's the most popular. And just, I don't like his goofy attitude. He has this, I don't know. He feels almost like government plant. Like he's too popular for what he brings to the table. And he's got all this celebrity cachet and this like deep longing from the women of the world, which maybe is more of it than anything of my jealousy towards him. And then every time you see him interacting with like a pro basketball player, he's the biggest fucking dork in the world. You're like, this guy, he doesn't fit. Why are you when you don't even make amazing music?
Yeah, I feel that. And I don't know what it is because there's a lot of bad rap out there. There's a lot of bad music out there. I make bad music. You know what I mean?
I'll contest to that.
It's and I don't have not even like an ounce of disdain for anybody else out there that's making bad music. Not even a shred. It's like, oh, I don't like it. Moving on. I don't even think about it. But something about Drake just really grinds my gears. And I
might be a little bit of that the Tupac theory too. Like Tupac was actually a gay actor that was hired to be Tupac and became this fake gangster rapper. It might be a little bit of that. It's like, dude, you were the guy from Degrassi. Like
you're always you're the crippled kid from Degrassi, bro.
You're not. This is supposed to be like
Aubrey,
like you know how many
name.
You know how many young Jewish boys were great rappers that wanted to be in the space and they never had a shot because they weren't hard enough for the industry. And somehow you slipped through. You're a fucking child actor, dude, from Canada.
Dude, you went to private school. Your name is Aubrey. Like, bro.
Yeah, it's odd that you're accepted at all into this community.
Yeah, it's probably a plan.
And praised by so many.
Everything I hate is the CIA, and I'm sure they have a part in it. That's all I got. That's all I got on the pop culture.
I just have a small one. I think I've already brought this up to you, but maybe I haven't. I hope I haven't now that we're on the air here. Are you familiar with Emilia Perez, the series?
I have heard. I've heard. I've seen a little bit about it. I'm familiar. I at least know this.
Have you seen the clip? Have you seen any videos of it?
I think I've seen one clip. Is it the one where I think I've seen the one where they're like walking through the hospital.
Okay, yes, that's the one I was referring to, where they're doing the song about sex change operations. It's for anybody who's wondering what the hell I'm rambling about. It's a Netflix show that a lot of people were lauding as the perfect crescendo and end of the woke push and culture in this nation and the end of the Biden era. It is a show about a cartel boss who has a sex change operation and becomes a woman. Of course, it's also a musical because it had to be as gay as possible. And it doesn't seem like it's a good musical by the clips I've seen. It's very crude, badly sung musical songs. I wonder what the cartel's reaction is to it. Like that seems like it would feel like an insult to be like, oh, we're talking about starting wars with you guys, calling you terrorists, and also one of our most popular 13 Oscar nominations, by the way.
Huge amount of Oscar nominations. I saw that.
I forget what movie it was they were throwing. Maybe it was Oppenheimer, but they're like, there's some great movie that's held by all as like this tremendous masterpiece, and it's like this got more nominations than that. Like this is more important to liberal Hollywood than some of the best cinema you've ever seen. One of the most, but to be simultaneously telling the cartel that we might be sending special agents down there to deal with them, and then be like, also one of our most popular Netflix programs right now is about how you guys are all trannies deep down.
And dude, what an insult to the, you know what I mean? Like that's a
that's
a culture that is not like that type of stuff. And that's the problem with the Big Tent. You know, when you start bringing everybody in the tent, a lot of people are going to be like, I'm not happy about what's in this tent. It's like, I don't like them either.
That's another thought I had with this concept of the show is like, how many cartels out there do you think would be cool with a trans boss? How many of those grunts on the ground with MS-13 tattoos on their face are like, oh, our boss transitioned? Well, she's the boss, so use the right pronouns now.
Right. It's like, well, make sure it's very intolerant of you to still use their dead name. Yeah. Yeah. I imagine
it's not Emilio anymore. Amelia beheaded 17 people at the border.
Get it right. You're perpetuating the hatred against the community that's marginalized, bro.
There is. I never did confirm if the actual actress is trans.
Oh, yeah, I haven't looked into that.
What did I just say the name of the show was?
Emilia Perez.
Emilia Perez. Damn, it has 4 seasons. Jesus Christ.
Wow.
Carla Sofia.
And we're just now hearing about it.
Actress. Yep. Okay. So she, as I suspected from the trailer I watched, she is a real trans person.
Oh, interesting.
There's a scene in there that in the trailer had me rolling because Zoe Saldana's the detective who's looking for this cartel boss. And there's the scene where she is sitting next to her at the big dinner and they're talking about everybody and she's trying to, and then she has the moment where she goes like, it's you. She goes, bingo. And it's just funny because she's every bit as large a woman as I would make if I transitioned. So you're like, you're in a room full of all these women in skin tight dresses. You didn't think the 6'2" linebacker next to you might be the trans?
Right, like, whoa, shocking. It's like, look at those broad shoulders, dude.
It's you. How did you figure it out? Like, wait, what are you talking about? I could have told you 3 seconds into that room which one it was.
Bro, I saw this video and it's one of those things that's like, how thirsty and desperate are dudes out there? Because there's this, you know, it's like it's a woman, and you can tell pretty quick. It's like, oh, that's a dude. You know, it doesn't take a lot. You don't have to be Sherlock Holmes to figure out that, oh, that's a guy. But it's like, oh, I just met this guy and he was talking about like, come over and yada. And it's like, I want to, you know, he's just like, I'm going to give you the glizzy, and his voice changes. And you're like, and the comment section was like, oh, had me fooled. Oh, you know, it's like, still might have her. And it's like, bro, like, first and foremost, it wasn't that hard to figure out, you know what I mean? Just like, just look at, you know, just like, all you gotta do is,
hey, I can
do one of these double takes.
I can remember the first night we watched a live podcast, because I think it was one of the first ones Alex Jones came back on.
Yep,
so I don't know if you want to be throwing stones in your glass house over there, Matt.
Yeah, no, for
White
sure.
fooled you for a good 15 minutes.
Did you know what? And it was after that moment I started taking real hard looks.
He started looking at those knuckles a little harder.
Dude, that was my moment of like transcendence, dude.
Can you imagine what it's like now to be born as like a slightly heavy set woman who's 6'1" with broad shoulders? You know how unfortunate the dating world is for you. And there were so many guys who would have been fine and had zero problem and even been attracted to that years ago that would have approached you.
Just like,
and now they're looking at you across the bar with suspicious eyes and they are not about to come buy you a drink.
It's a shame.
It sucks.
And it also goes to show it's just like kind of related. I saw this video a couple of days ago of, clearly a lesbian woman talking about the pitfalls. And she goes, look, like lesbian, gay, bi, those are attractions. And then she's like, trans, that's an identification. And you guys messed this up for all of us. And, it's like you guys pushed onto the movement of all like, hey, you have to be accepted. And she's like, you have nothing, like what you have going on has got nothing to do with me. And you shit in the punch bowl for all of us, because now they're talking about like repealing gay marriage and stuff because you guys are weird. And
yeah, what we got here? We got the lesbians, we got the gays, we got the bis. Let's start protesting. Everybody should be able to love whoever they want to love. And then somebody behind them's like, I'm a fox. And they're like, let's rethink our slogan. What the fuck is that?
For sure.
You want to marry inanimate objects? I don't think you're part of our thing.
Right. It's like, nope, not in our tune. It reminds me of
who you want, not what you want.
who. I remember I saw this, and 4chan as always unhinged, as all are, you know what I mean? It's always has been, always will be. And there was this post I saw probably a year ago where the guy, he's like, all I wanted to do was marry the person that I loved. And everybody talked about how the slippery slope. And if we let gays get married, and it's like, well, what's next? And I thought that argument was absurd. And he goes, fast forward 15 years. And all of a sudden, that we're coming for your kids thing that we thought was so ridiculous when I was just trying to like marry the person I loved. He's like, well, I guess you guys were right. Maybe we shouldn't have gotten married. It's like, maybe you shouldn't have let us got married.
Well, we will give this license back to walk back to this crazy.
Right? It's like, and I think that's like it's probably like the crisis that's going on right now in the Democratic Party. They have no identity. It's like, it's not enough to just hate Donald Trump. That you can't rally around that anymore. The big tent has failed. The big tent's too big. Way too many people. It's like the big tent is the same as like the French and the British drawing straight lines in colonial Africa and the Middle East. It's like, well, you guys drew a straight line, but you guys just lumped in two warring tribes that hated each other for a very long time and said like, we'll get along. You're in the country now. It's the same thing, and you're seeing the complete backlash of the straight line drawing of the borders. It's like, well, everybody's in the Democratic Party. And they're like,
yeah, it's true.
I really don't like those over there.
I mean, outside of strong Republican issues, what is an issue that is in that gray area that everybody on the Democratic side can agree on? It's a thin Venn diagram, man. There's not much in there.
It's and this is something, I gotta give Kiefer credit for this. I thought that it may have been a lot shorter lived, kind of this like swing to the right, but watching like who the DNC, who they elected as their chair and vice chair, watching them protest today about Elon Musk and some dude sleeping in a government building. No organization. It's going to take years to rebuild, to actually come back with an effective coalition. I mean, it's right. It's for better, for worse.
Or to your point, they need another Obama or a Trump on the left. Like it, but
he's not coming. He's not coming in 2 years.
Yeah, I don't know who that is. I don't see him on the horizon.
He's not in the. And to be fair, nobody expected Obama until he spoke at the DNC. That's what I mean. But there's a really good book called The Amateur that talked about Obama. And it's like, he's an amateur. He didn't belong in the White House. But part of it was written to try to discredit him, but half of the book, I'm like, bro earned his spot as far as I'm concerned, because it talked about all of the sermons. Like he would go and speak at these churches week in and week out, and he did that for years. It's like by the time that he got on the stage of the DNC, that is a man well versed in like the skill of being a powerful speaker.
Yeah, I don't know if we've had a more powerful orator run for president than Obama. I mean, he was
makes you feel good about war crimes.
A lot of problems I have with Obama. The dude is amazing when you get a microphone in front of him. To this day, he still has it. He's a rock star.
He is so good at it, and you can't deny that. And I think it's going to be it will come, right? You can't win forever. Something will happen, but I don't see it in the next couple of years, the next 4, 5, 6 years. It's the right time, for better or for worse, and we'll see.
It does take a fumble, There's got to be a turnover on the field to change this momentum.
It'll happen. It'll happen. You can't hold on to the ball forever.
They will find a way to fuck it up for sure. Eventually.
They will. It's inevitable. You know what I mean? It's like in the world of sports analogies, and you understand this. Sometimes you don't have to be a genius GM. You just got to wait. You just have to be smart enough to realize when New York doesn't re-sign Saquon Barkley, then it's I'll give him a contract. You know what I mean? It's that's not Philadelphia's. No, I will say Philadelphia's GM is good, but that's not genius level shit. That's just
sometimes you just have to sit on your hands until somebody decides that the best 24-year-old player in the history of the league is a little bit too fat, and they'll just trade him straight to the Lakers for nothing. You never know what's going to happen.
It's one of those things you don't have to, right? You don't have to be a brilliant GM. You just got to wait for Dallas to be fucking idiots.
Got to wait for Dallas to hire an industry sleeper agent to destroy our team. So upset about that. I've both of these last 2 weeks, as I've come up to the episode, I'm I've done zero political research this week because I've just been looking for any reason to decide why Dallas didn't absolutely fuck up that trade. And I haven't found it yet.
I think, and your loyalty is valuable, and I appreciate that. I don't think that anybody could blame you if you jump ship from both of those franchises after, you know what I mean? I think everybody's going to give you a free pass on that one. It's you're a bandwidth. It's you've suffered enough abuse. Come to the fold, brother. Come over here.
I think I'm just going to go be, I want a consistent franchise. I think I'm going to go be a Cleveland Browns fan. That way I know that we're going to suck and I don't have to even think about winning games. I can just be consistent at least.
That's fair. That's
telling me how my team's America's team and has this giant budget and it's not working.
Right. It's but Brian Schottenheimer and Jerry Jones doesn't give me courage when he says I'm out of my comfort zone. It's not the press conference he thought it was. Yeah, that's fair. Now we're getting into the weeds. I want to talk to you.
Yeah, I'm ready.
We'll do this off there because nobody cares. Thank you very much for listening to Against the Mob podcast. We appreciate you guys tuning in week in and week out. Thank you for finding us wherever we are. Thank you for subscribing. Thank you for spending your time. I know that there are a million different interests and ways that you could spend your audio listening, allotment of your day. And if you choose to listen to us, we are deeply appreciated. We love you for that. Can't stress that enough. We will talk into the microphone if nobody listens, but we are extremely thankful that you'd actually choose to spend your time listening to us rant, rave, bullshit, go through all of our trials and tribulations. Thank you from the bottom of our heart. We really appreciate you. We will see you next week. We fight against the mob with people over politics.
Goodbye.